Hey guys, welcome back to What the Fat. We have an awesome guest on today, someone who I probably watched a lot of when I was with my cousin watching Power Rangers, someone who really is in the spotlight all the time, and that is a good friend of mine, William Shewfelt. And William's not only an actor, he's a speaker, a health advocate, talks all around the world, but most people know him for being the Red Power Ranger, which is really cool. I remember watching that back in the day of like Go Power Rangers, right? Really, really interesting. So we dive a little bit into that, what it was like, what some of the trials and tribulations and struggles he faces and how he overcomes them, and with that Power Ranger mindset. And then we also dive into like how he got introduced to keto and really his take on like carnivore. He takes more of a carnivorous approach, and we understand why. So without further ado, guys, I'm excited to introduce to you William, and so let's jump into it. All right, William, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
I'm good, dude. I'm glad we could finally chat. I feel like we're getting to know each other on the air, which is going to be cool. But I've seen you at different conferences. I was at KetoCon this past year. I saw you at the Metabolic Health Summit, but usually those are just crazy affairs, and you don't always get to talk to everyone you want to. So, yeah, we're connecting now.
It's awesome, man. I've been wanting to do this for a while because I've been seeing your stuff on social. Like your posts are amazing because one of the things that you touch on, which I think a lot of times people get themselves into this box of like, oh, that person's just a keto guy or something. Like, oh, he's just a keto. But you talk about like motivation, inspiration, actionable steps to like for people to take, and we're going to jump into that later on. But I love that because that's ultimately what a healthy lifestyle is all about, is encompassing it all. And you're like a perfect example of that. But before we get into that, I want to take people back. I want people to understand like who you are, like your upcoming, and kind of how that shaped you. So can you give people a little insight of like how, like growing up and what inspired you to get into the health, fitness, wellness field in general?
Okay. I'll take them through the tearjerker story. So basically I had a great upbringing, extremely athletic as a kid, just always was doing martial arts and sports and things like that. And really got into the gym at about 12 or 13. I had always been obsessed with weights. I just loved it, but I couldn't get in the gym before that. So at about 12 or 13, I got into Gold's Gym, started lifting, and that was when I got my first exposure to the dark subculture of protein powders and GNC salesmen and like all these different things. So I just got super into that. I would watch Pumping Iron every night before I went to sleep. It was weird. Doing that for years, and then it was right at about when I was 15 or 16, I'm in high school, and I was trying to get as strong as possible because I was really into powerlifting and competitive arm wrestling, and I'm just a naturally skinny, kind of small-boned guy. So I was just trying to get as strong as I possibly could, doing gallon of milk a day and all these different squat protocols and just training I was training hard. And it was when I started to eat for bulking that I started to get worse and worse acne, had a lot of gut issues, and I basically got such severe acne that it got to the point where dermatologists were kind of surprised, and it was pretty much the most severe of anybody I'd ever seen. And it's crazy how it shoots your confidence down. You can't make eye contact when you're talking to people. You just can't express your personality. It was real bad. So that was sort of my impetus to start looking into health, because I just intuitively felt, I think this is more of an internal health issue, and my external appearance might have a lot to do with my health. So I started looking into that, and paleo was pretty hot at the time. But it's tough to do paleo when you have a Caribbean mother who's making all the carbs in the world, and it's tough to turn that down. So pretty much the skin issue continued for a while. I go off to college, and I'm like, okay, finally I can do my own thing. I have control over my diet, and I'm going to eat what I want to eat. And at the time, I started to do more research, and then I stumbled upon who was the messiah to me at the time. This was Dr. Michael Greger. And I was like, oh, sweet. Okay, so it's a vegan diet. That's what it's all about. Just shoot the antioxidants up, high fiber, whole foods, plant-based. I did that for a little over 4 years, and everything was great. Had the honeymoon period, skin got better, had some energy, lost a little bit of weight. And then things just got progressively worse and worse and worse. And there was no amount of strategic supplementation or looking out for FODMAPs or, restricting this food, adding this food, supplementing this. I tried so many things, and my health was just getting worse, and I felt like crap every day. So pretty much my transition into keto actually began when I was doing Power Rangers. So I got into acting towards the end of that vegan journey there. And for me, getting into health and fitness, I was trying to get as lean and shredded and just chiseled as possible, because for the goals that, the roles that I envisioned myself in with like action adventure type roles, I thought that's the sort of physique I wanted to have. So that's what I was training for. And I'm now like 1 season into Power Rangers. We've done 20-something episodes, and I'm in New Zealand, and I'm still like bringing my my bowl of chickpeas and black beans and quinoa and all this like smelly crap to set, and I'm eating this stuff, and it didn't feel good. But it was like a surprisingly demanding role, very action heavy, really, really early call times. You wrap pretty late at night, and it's a 6-day-a-week thing, and we're doing this for 9 months. So my health was deteriorating like on screen, which sucks. But pretty much I had to come to terms with myself. Look, I've tried so many ways of doing this vegan thing. I have just given this the best shot I can, and it's clearly not helping me achieve my goals. It's absolutely hindering me. And I see everybody else around me eating normally, and they look fine and they feel fine. Like, clearly I'm the one, I think, that has the issue. So I need to change something here. And I started to do some research, and that's when I started to learn about ketogenic diets. This is, I think, early 2016 maybe. Okay. And I really started to delve into that. So I basically had a 180 shift. We had 3 weeks off between season 1 and season 2. So I went home, flew back to the States, and I implemented keto, and it was like overnight. I didn't do any sort of induction phase. There was no slowly going into it. It was like I went from my green smoothies one day to just bacon and butter and what I thought keto, what I thought a great keto diet was. And I actually felt better almost immediately. So I think all of the B vitamins, all of the zinc, all of the great, nutrients that you're getting from red meat, that you're getting from egg yolks, all these different foods, I was probably starved for them at that point because I trained pretty hard. So as soon as I got those, and all the salt as well, I felt damn good. So it wasn't that tough to transition for me. And I pretty much followed along with keto, did that for the rest of this whole Power Rangers gig, but I was never getting super ripped. Like, I would look at guys like Jason Whitrock and stuff like that, and I was like, I can't drink enough butter coffee to look like this guy. Like, what is he doing that I'm not doing? And I just kept experimenting, and as soon as I found out about the work of Ted Naiman, I started to learn more about protein to energy ratio. Maybe you shouldn't be just chugging as much fat as you can. Maybe adding fat isn't always a great idea if you're trying to lose body fat, and you can sort of supplement that with your own love handles and the stuff covering your abs. So, and then I started to try Carnivore, and that, I know I'm rambling on here a bit, but Carnivore is basically the closest thing to a magic pill I've ever tried. And whenever I tell people about this, I sound like a snake oil salesman, but it's been that damn good for me. Where doing a nutrient dense, high protein to energy ratio carnivore diet in combination with the way that I train has basically made it very effortless for me to stay at anywhere from 6 to 8% body fat year round without tracking calories, eating to satiety, amazing gym performance. My cognitive function's fantastic, skin's better. So all of these different things that I wanted, I had all these criteria for what a perfect diet was. I wanted to look good. I wanted to feel good. I wanted to be strong in the gym. I wanted it to be great digestion, satiety, all of those things. And this is the only thing I found that checks all of those boxes. So that's kind of how the long story of how I arrived at where I'm at right now.
No, that's incredible. And there's a ton of great insight and information in there. Backtracking a second, looking at going from someone who went pure vegan to now you're on the other end of the spectrum, carnivore, there are people that are out there that might still be eating vegan but facing some of the challenges that, like, hey, how do I get out of this? Was there a lot of because I'm sure you were talking about it on set with like some of the other people, or you were probably posting about like, hey, I'm vegan, this is why I'm trying to feel better. Was there like a lot of judgment of people being like, wait a minute, like what the heck are you doing? Now you're going into this keto thing. How did that play out?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely among like, well, so actors are the weirdest with diets. Every actor's on some strange diet and they feel the need to promote it and put it on everyone else. I was never that evangelical, but everybody knew that I was on this like vegan diet. And it was more something they talked about than I talked about. Like I don't really push any of my diets on people, but I just sort of speak about my experience. But there was definitely, as soon as people saw me eating meat, it was like, I told you you'd come around. Because I remember some people would tell me, like, you'll eat meat again someday. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure I won't. I'm pretty sure this is the right diet. Like China Study, McDougal, like I'm pretty sure I know what I'm doing here. And they were right. And they loved rubbing that in my face. But I don't really mind. I know a lot of people talk about like changing diets is tough in social situations and like your family and friends and your peer groups. I've never had as much of an issue with that. I kind of like doing my own thing, and I think you would probably agree with this. Like when you have your own trajectory, your compass is set on certain goals. You have a lot of people support you, and you also have some haters and some people that kind of talk down on what you're doing. So I think that just comes with the territory of trying to improve yourself and trying to achieve a goal. So it didn't bother me too much. I think it's kind of funny most of the time when people make fun of different diets and stuff that I'm doing. So, yeah, I laugh along with them.
No, that's awesome, man. You gotta, right? You gotta keep it fun and say, listen, the one thing, and this is even like where I come from with the science background, like if you're so stagnant or set on your way that you're not open to any other change, like that's the epitome of someone who's a terrible scientist. Like you need to be completely open to change. And for you, I think you recognize like, hey, my body is lacking certain nutrients for what I'm doing. Like I need to be able to perform at a high level. And you immediately saw changes once you made that shift or made that transition. So one of the things is when you did make that transition, you said you were eating like a lot of butter, bacon, eggs. What did your diet look like now versus like you talked a little bit about how you're more carnivore. What did it look like when you first started, and how is that like transition into like what you're eating now?
So I did take a lot of the old vegan stuff with me. So I still believed that I needed to be eating just tons of leafy greens, cruciferous veggies. So I was including a lot of those. I still had a bunch of flax seeds, chia seeds, it was very, very high fiber. It was also very high fat, and my protein was extremely low. For me, it was pretty low. It was like, honestly, some days I'd be at 60, 75 grams of protein for the day. And I just figured like, well, it's protein sparing and I'm burning fat. So, why not? And then my fat was just sky high. So it was macadamia nuts and dark chocolate and, lots of, Kerrygold and, tons of MCT oil and coconut oil and, lots of fatty coffees and pretty much all the usual suspects, cheese, high fat dairy, cream cheese. And I think this stuff was a lot more popular a couple of years ago when people were like just getting into keto, because I don't remember many people back then talking about like, you might want to watch how much fat you're eating. Like, just depending on your goals, like pretty much everyone back then was like, look, the whole calories in, calorie out is dead. Like it's all about the fat. Insulin's the only thing that matters. So I was really just taking that. So that's kind of what my diet was like back then. Lots of salads, lots of fat. I was into the whole using vegetables as a vehicle to get more fat in. I think I heard Peter Attia said that, and I was like, okay, cool. I'll just dump olive oil on everything. Very, very high fat, moderate to lowish protein, and then obviously very low carb. And I stuck to that for like 4 or 5 months, didn't cheat once, because I thought when you got knocked out of ketosis, like you're out. Like you're out for weeks and you got to build back all the machinery and stuff, which isn't necessarily how it works. So what my diet looks like now, it's still very, very low carb. It's a lot lower in fat than it used to be. So nowadays I might be doing like 2 to 1 in terms of protein to fat. So a lot of times I'll be eating 200, 250 maybe grams of protein a day. I might even get up to 300 grams a day, just depending on how I'm feeling, because I eat to satiety. And then my fat's probably more on like the 100, 150, might get up to like 175 every now and then. So that's probably about where my macros are, but I generally don't track. I don't add fats to my foods. I usually stick with, so my foods are usually like meat, eggs, fish, and occasionally fermented dairy. And that's usually for me high quality cottage cheese or Greek yogurt. That's the crux of my diet. And then I'll also like supplement with, once a week I eat about 4 ounces of liver. I do some bone meal for the calcium, just to get in like that whole nose to tail thing. So I'm not going to eat bones. I'm not down for that.
Yeah.
I'll get in some bone meal. I do some hydrolyzed collagen to balance out like the glycine to methionine ratio, because it's very meat heavy, methionine heavy diet. I do egg yolks, some wild salmon for the iodine. But that's about what my diet is looking like now. Some magnesium at night. That's pretty much what I eat now, but definitely a lot less fat, a lot more protein, and that's kind of been like the magic of it for me.
Amazing. And so like it's very nutrient dense. Like a lot of times people think the minute they hear, and I think it's starting to become like, oh, it's carnivore, so they're just thinking a Baconator without the bun for every meal, and they're not thinking like the liver, the fish, or some of the other things that you're consuming. So someone's listening to this and they're like, all right, well, what's his day look like today? Like, can you run us through a typical day for you of like what that looks like?
Yeah, so I like to just wait until I'm hungry to eat. So this naturally sort of tends to be like a 16-8 for me. But I will just wait until I'm like absolutely hungry. And I think that's a great way to really optimize your body composition. Don't eat because it's a set meal time. Like, make it a challenge for yourself. Just push it and see, like, when am I truly, truly hungry? So whenever I hit that, maybe it's 1 or 2 p.m. Like right now, I'm still enjoying some very, very strong coffee right now. So I like to drink coffee in the morning. I'm not a religious carnivore. You know, it's not like no plant chemicals enter my body at all. So yeah, I'm enjoying some black coffee right now. I do occasionally, if I'm about to train, I might put in some hydrolyzed collagen in there. And that's just something that I've learned from Mark Sisson on his blog, where it's sometimes good to have as a pre-workout to shuttle it to where it needs to go. So I'll do that, but it's still about like maybe 50 calories total with that collagen. So I'm in a semi-fasted state there. I'll go train fasted. So 3 days a week I am lifting. 6 days a week I'm doing some form of zone 2 cardio. So for me that usually looks like light jogging or just going for brisk walks, things like hiking. I try to get out of the gym on those days. Yeah, and then I'm probably later today I'm going to be eating, I think I might only eat dinner today, and I'm going to be eating steak. I'm going to be having some salmon. I'm going to be having some liver. I might do some oysters because I have some oysters here. So I like to get in a ton of variety there. I salt the crap out of my foods. You know, I make sure it tastes good. I do occasionally use these Primal Kitchen sauces that I got sent. They have a steak sauce that's ridiculously good. I occasionally use that. And that's kind of what a day of eating will look like for me. I don't really track much. I'm more about food choices now. So I try to make the best choices, and then I just let my body determine how much to eat. And if you're prioritizing the nutrient-dense foods and you're keeping that protein to energy ratio optimal, you can kind of listen to your body and just go with satiety, and you're just going to find that you start to lean out over time.
Absolutely. You talked a little bit about, like, you take magnesium at night. Is there anything else that you incorporate in? You talked a little bit about collagen, magnesium, salt is very big. What else? Is there anything else? Potassium. Do you do anything for potassium?
No, I don't really supplement potassium. If I feel the urge to have berries every now and then, or like half an avocado or something, I'll do that, but that's very rare. It's maybe once every couple weeks. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't really supplement potassium. I do occasionally take cod liver oil. I have some of that, the Carlson's lemon flavored. So I occasionally take that, but that's pretty much my diet right there. I try to focus on red meat, eggs, fish, maybe fermented dairy, and then I just try to supplement smartly around that with things that we probably would have gotten with nose to tail ancestral type eating. And that's pretty much my diet. So it's usually 1 to 2 meals a day and training fasted.
And with the meat and the eggs that you get, do you typically try and go like grass-fed, grass-finished, or do you just kind of just go whatever's available you grab?
Yeah, so I'm majority, I go for the highest quality stuff I can find, always pasture-raised eggs. 75% of the time it's grass-fed meats, so usually grass-fed steaks, grass-fed ground beef, things like that. The seafood is always wild caught. I always go for the Alaskan stuff. just the best quality I can find. And, you know, so the counter argument to that with a lot of people is like, it really doesn't make that big of a difference. We don't know yet. You know, and there's a lot of people talking about this right now, and they're not sure if it matters or if it doesn't matter. And then they bring in budget considerations. And I'm like, look, so basically, if you can eat those foods, why risk it? You know,
Right.
You're not going to be in worse health for eating grass-fed or wild-caught. So if you can afford it, to me, it's just sort of like an insurance policy. It's the same reason I include so much nutrient diversity with these animal foods. It's the same reason I supplement around this stuff. Can you get by on just red meat and water? Totally you can. I've done like I used to ask Danny Vega about this because I was like, dude, I've been eating like Wendy's patties 95% of my diet. I feel amazing and I look ripped and I'm happy, but like, is this healthy? And he thought it was really funny when I asked him. He's like, you're probably fine right now. But I don't do that anymore because it's just, if I want to make this a lifestyle, if I really want this to serve me into my old age, and I can see myself doing this for a long, long time because I feel great, then I should probably do it as smartly as I can. And Ted Naiman had a great quote about that where he spoke about like being vegetarian, and he said he promised himself that he would never again do a diet where he looks back on that and says, that was kind of dumb, you know? Mm-hmm. So he says, if I'm just doing, you know, beef patties, that might be kind of dumb. But if we're incorporating more of an ancestral diet, I think that makes a bit more sense.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, I forget who said it. I saw it on social media. Someone said, buy the highest quality meat or foods that you can afford. Like, that's the way I always look at it. And I'm the same way. Like, 70% of the time, I'm probably going grass-fed, grass-finished. Sure, there are some times where it might not be, but I'm getting it in anyway. It's better than having, like, a bowl full of sugar or something like that. You know what I mean? So,
better than just jumping off the diet. So
exactly.
I think that that's a very reasonable way to look about it. If you're going to eat conventional meats, conventional eggs, things like that, is that superior to a bowl of cereal? Totally. I think it totally is. So, yeah, it really is just about doing the best you can.
And so where did you go? Because you're really knowledgeable on a bunch of different areas. Like, hey, I'm taking this for this, or I'm taking this for this. Before you started in carnivore, I'm sure you had some reservations. What were some of the things that you were like, oh, I need to educate myself on this, 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 and this? You talked a little bit about Ted Naiman with like protein. What are some other resources that you were like, wow, this is starting to make sense. Like I should be cutting down dairy a little bit. Maybe I don't need to force a ton of the vegetables and chia seeds and everything else I was taking
in. There were a couple different people. Yes, Ted Naiman was a huge influence. Even though he's not carnivore, it was just kind of his approach to nutrition. I'm trying to think about who it was, but I remember I did have reservations early on, and it was mainly around the role of electrolytes, I think, at the time. I thought, you know, micronutrients and electrolytes, and I thought that if you did carnivore, you probably had to be eating kidneys and brains and like things like that. And I was like, that's not really my cup of tea, so I don't know if this is the right diet for me. But I'm not exactly sure who it was, but I just eventually started eliminating more and more plant foods, and I found that I didn't crave them. I didn't really want them. It always felt like, you know, it's kind of like doing your chores. Like you just had to eat some plant food, so you need to make sure to include some kale or some broccoli with this. And the more I ate just strictly carnivore, it just suited me better, and I enjoyed it a lot more. So it was kind of a natural progression there. And then as I was doing that, Sean Baker went on Joe Rogan, which was it's a pivotal moment for all of us carnivores, a historic moment. We have pictures on our wall. Sean Baker went on Joe Rogan, and the thing just exploded in popularity. And I was always following websites like Zero Carb Zen and Principia Carnivora and these different Facebook groups. So just trying those things out and experimenting with it. It was a lot of different influences from different people. But yeah, I think some of the great resources right now, Chris and I are trying to interview as many of them on our podcast as possible without getting boxed into that carnivore space. But one of the guys I'm really liking right now is Paul Saladino. He's got some great information, and he's got that just very well-versed scientific background in the supplementation and the nose-to-tail eating that I kind of like. I can't say that I do everything he says because some of it I'm like, I still like my cottage cheese. I like my, you know, I'm being a little bit lazy. But I think he's a great source of information. And, yeah, so there's a lot of great people out there that you can check out.
For sure, and you're definitely one of those people that I always recommend when people are like, "Hey, what about this?" And I'm like, "Go check him out. Like, he's doing it, he's thriving on it. Like, it's been a game changer for you." And I didn't even know your entire backstory. I knew bits and pieces of it, but seeing that change and like it's making it a lifestyle. And I'm actually in the midst of doing like a 30-day experiment myself. One of the things that I'm looking at gut microbiome. But the other thing I'm looking at is deuterium. And I think this is something that people don't talk about often. It's like the number one thing I actually think that most carnivores actually can potentially reap benefits from going carnivore is there's literally this, I won't go too far into it, but mitochondria basically can be affected by something known as deuterium. And deuterium tends to be higher in sugar, carbohydrate-rich foods. But foods that are low in deuterium are fatty cuts of meat, fish, things like that. And so I was like, wow, no one's really measured this. But I really think that by going carnivore and staying away from potentially even some of these vegetables that might be higher in deuterium, you're lowering that. And that might be some of the reasons, like Sean even talks about, he's seeing these cases, not only the vegan recovery, like people that are coming out of vegan, but just people in general that are applying this really for therapeutic purposes, which is even more fascinating of how they're utilizing this, like with IBS and a lot of inflammation. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of this just wave around carnivore. And a lot of people are saying, you're losing weight, it's sort of a keto diet. Those are pretty much the reasons for the benefits. But I think removing those harmful plant antigens that might be a much bigger part of it, because a lot of people with, mental health issues that are experiencing these sort of issues, autoimmune issues, things like that, they're experiencing better benefits on carnivore than on a higher plant-based sort of ketogenic diet. So I think that's really crucial. I'm not that familiar with deuterium. Can you tell me what that is? Is that like a plant toxin, or what is that?
So basically, it's like it's a heavier hydrogen molecule. So it's an atom that's basically inside of our bodies, and it's actually the most popular sources are drinking water. So drinking water is actually really high in deuterium. So that's an interesting piece. But foods that are like meats that are higher in fat are a lot lower in deuterium.
I have to switch up.
It's interesting. It's really interesting to look at. But one of the things, and this is one of the caveats that people always ask me about, is what about satiety? Like when you're working with people and you're talking to people about like, hey, I'm coming from someone, and this has been one of the challenges for me, but I'm slowly starting to overcome and see changes with that. But me, I come from eating an enormous Cobb salad, right? Like I eat all these Cobbs. What have you seen, or what have you experienced and seen others experience with like satiety when they're so used to getting maybe steak and a bunch of vegetables and a side salad, but now they're only getting, maybe they're getting 2 steaks instead? What do you see in regards to satiety?
Personally, I've experienced greatly improved satiety on relatively fewer calories, that was really big for me. And I find that pretty much everyone that I talk to, when I get them going with, like, I do different carnivore coaching things online, and I also have a carnivore fat loss plan. When I start them off on this, it is important to actually start with a higher calorie approach. You do want to have more fat in the diet. You are in sort of an energy crisis in the beginning there, especially if you haven't keto adapted. But over time, it basically seems that you get better at utilizing your own body fat, and you can eat leaner and leaner and be satiated from that. So now I'm to the point where I eat pretty lean most of the time. There's definitely a good amount of dietary fat there, but I think that satiety is a gradual progression. So in the beginning, yeah, you might want to be doing ribeyes and lots of eggs and things like that. You might even want to incorporate cheese. But as you continue on, I think it's really beneficial to scale back on the fat. And if you're scaling back on the fat to compensate with the satiety, I would say go higher in protein. So just consume more food in general. For me, like the amount of food I'm consuming, calorically it's less, but it looks like a damn lot of food. It's like I pile my plate high with food. So I'm eating quite a bit. And that's sort of how I compensate for the lack of satiety that you would be getting maybe from the dietary fat. For me, vegetables, I don't know. It's crazy that I was vegan for so long because I was just never that huge of a fan. I know it's interesting. Like a lot of people don't want to eat their vegetables until you tell them to go carnivore, and then they're like, "Oh, but what about my vegetables?" And it's like, wait a minute. I thought we were all in agreement here that we didn't want to eat these. So yeah, for me, I do understand that fiber does provide an added satiety benefit. And when you look at studies with like the lowest ad lib satiety, the macronutrients usually come out to be very high protein. It's kind of moderate fat. And then there is a slight bit of carbohydrates that usually comes with these fibrous vegetables. So I think that there's something to be said for that. But I would still prefer people eat a bit more and maybe scale back on that. And that's just kind of the approach that I found best for me.
I love that. And one of the things you touched on is getting in like you eat liver. And the importance of organ meats. Can you talk a little bit about the organ meats and if that's essential, or is that just to truly optimize not only a carnivore diet, but like just a ketogenic diet in general?
Is it essential? No. But is it optimal? Probably. And I say probably because nobody's really that certain yet. And that's the thing that I've sort of realized about this whole dietary space. There's not a ton of certainty, but I think the anecdotes say something. All of these case studies really say something, and we should pay attention to those. But if you're trying to do this thing smartly, and you know that liver is an extremely nutrient-dense superfood, and it's high in a lot of the vitamins that these muscle meats are not, it serves you to consume that. So I always recommend to people once a week, try to have yourself some liver. If you just can't stomach it at all, go for maybe some I used to do desiccated liver pills, like the real old school bodybuilder stuff. So you can do some of that. There's a lot of great sources. I like Ancestral Supplements. They actually have fantastic supplements around adrenal glands and bone meal and different things like that. So there are ways to get this in without actually eating it. But liver is really not that bad, especially if you make it like kind of medium rare. If you just sear the outsides and leave the inside kind of rare, it's actually a little sweet. Which is good. So, but I do recommend with a lot of people, definitely consume liver. One thing I've been reading about recently is kind of an anti-fatigue factor with liver. And this might have to do with a lot of the B vitamins in there, but they're just stating that it's fantastic for athletes because it can really support your energy. And I can subjectively kind of notice that when I eat liver the next day, I tend to be a lot higher energy. Is that placebo? Maybe, who knows? But I just feel better. So I think it's crucial. Now, the other organ meats a lot of people mention would be kidney and heart and things like that. So to me, looking at this thing as a sustainable dietary approach, I don't really care to go out of my way to find those. So for me, like when you look at centenarians and a lot of these people and you ask them, okay, so how many of you were eating heart and kidneys and liver, and make sure you had these, all these other things, I think you can do pretty well if you're just doing liver, egg yolks, oysters, steak, wild-caught seafood, things like that. I don't think you have to be perfect. That's what I try to tell people. If you look at – so I look at a lot of heroes of mine, and you look at people like Mark Sisson, or I even look at Arnold Schwarzenegger and Stallone, and these guys that have maintained amazing physiques and health into their old age. They're not perfect. They're not doing everything perfectly, but they're doing things pretty well. And it's sort of that 80-20 rule. So focus on what's going to be sustainable for you.
I love that. And I always tell people, don't confuse progress with perfection. Allow yourself to progress. And no one's going to be perfect no matter what you do. And I'm going to actually start doing that this week, is Danny actually started taking liver and mixing it in with ground beef and doing it as a bowl. That's something I think I'm going to try this week. So hopefully it'll just mix it up and taste really good.
There.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good way to do that. I don't know what the company's called, but maybe it's U.S. Wellness Meats that sells. Yeah. It's like a ground beef thing that has some of those organ meats in there. So that's always a way to do that. It's basically like burger patties you can make for yourself. But I think they have maybe heart and liver in there and some different things like that. So Yeah, sneak it in there. You don't always have to just eat it straight, you know?
Right. It's actually funny because I feed my dog, Scoot. He eats raw ketogenic, and he uses like the Valiant Pet patties, and I'm pretty sure like they have beef and liver and all that stuff in there, and he devours it. He freaking loves it. So I'm like, hey, bud, I'm gonna be eating liver with you. So I love that.
One for you, one for me. There we go.
That's right. Now, one of the things you talked about, and I'm actually the same way, so I love this approach, and I think it's best to try and get people here. But you work with a lot of clients, you work with a lot of people, and for some people, they might just be consuming an astronomical amount of calories. But like one of the things you talked about is like you eat intuitively, like you listen to your body. You're like, hey, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat, and I tend to like try and fill in most of it with like protein or high satiating foods. Do you find that that's the case with a lot of your clients, or do you find that like some of those people really need to like weigh stuff out at first and then you kind of try and progress them? What is that? What do you typically see?
At the beginning, I never recommend weighing stuff out. I never recommend really counting calories even. If you just take super satiating, high protein, high nutrient dense foods and you just eat those as much as you want, you're probably not going to put on very much fat. I find even for people that have, maybe their leptin and ghrelin and their satiety hormones are way out of whack and they've been doing super low fat diets for a long time, even if they're eating those foods and just gorging yourself on steaks and eggs and, things like that, seafood, it's very tough for them to get fat on those foods. So they usually don't experience too much of a fat mass increase. They might get a lean mass increase. They might actually, because of the extra protein, fill their muscles out a bit, which is great. I think that's fantastic. So I always recommend to them, it's more about your waist circumference and tracking different markers. I think the mirror is great, for example, but I don't like to emphasize too much the scale, because the scale, there's so many factors going on there, and it's not really a great measure of your health or how your physique is coming along. So the mirror, using a waist to height ratio, things like that. But yes, I always have them start off eating to satiety, and that's the most important part of my approach. And then as it goes on, let's say we've been doing that for 3, 4, 5 weeks, as they're starting to adjust to that, if it's like, okay, I find that I'm stalling out, I'm not really making progress at this point, then we can start to scale back, and it might be lower fat fermented dairy. It might be leaner beef, maybe draining the pan when you're making all of this ground beef. You might be doing some more seafood. You might switch from ribeyes to maybe some leaner steaks. So we start to make some of those changes, but the satiety stays the same. I still want people eating to satiety because personally it just doesn't make sense to me to artificially restrict calories and to restrict your body when it wants something that's nutritious for it. That's not going to make it fat in the first place. And that's another big part of this puzzle. When you look at protein overfeeding studies, it's really damn hard for people to get fat on protein. So if you're just consuming leaner cuts of protein, leaner animal meats, things like that, it's just really tough to get fat on that stuff. So that's why it's like you're filling your body, you're just pumping it full of nutrients, and it has a super high satiety effect. And then, it's kind of difficult for your body to turn that protein into fat. And I think we have a better understanding now of gluconeogenesis as not just, people say this way too much, but the whole chocolate cake and, I'm so sick of hearing that at this point. But yes, no, it's not chocolate cake. Done. Everyone's criticized that line at least once in this space. So I think we have a better understanding of the role of gluconeogenesis as being demand driven. If you're training hard, your body's going to know what to do with that protein, and it's better to have a bit more protein so you're not leaching from skeletal muscle and lean mass and things like that. So that's sort of I'm starting to forget the question, but so we were talking about eating to satiety, and for some people, do we need to restrict? And I would say rather than restricting the food quantity and the calories, it's more about changing the food choices.
Amazing. And to your point, like we've actually done research on the gluconeogenesis thing, and so a lot of the research shows that you will actually get some, but it's from amino acids that really only contribute to glucose like when that demand is needed. Like things like alanine get depleted, but like leucine, which is a very important amino acid, is maintained even on just like a regular ketogenic diet. So to your point, and our colleague, Dr. Joey Antonio, is really the one who did a lot of that protein overfeeding research. And you're absolutely right. Like, it's difficult to gain fat. Like, these people were eating upwards of 300 grams a day and they weren't gaining fat. And I think where people lose the context is, like, I think they lose context. We're talking about, like, hey, you're eating steak, you're eating salmon, you're having sometimes like Greek yogurt. Like, those are all high protein foods. We're not saying slug down a whey protein shake with 100 grams of protein in it just because. Like, yeah, you might get some type of glucose response, some type of insulin response from that. We're talking about, like, hey, if you're getting protein from whole food sources, it's probably not going to be an issue. And in fact, it's probably going to keep you more satiated than if you didn't. Right?
Yeah, the whole food sources part is super important. Part of what we're doing here, yes, I'm really trying to help people get a lean, ripped physique. Like, I don't lie to any of the people I work with. Like, I get what your goal is. You want the beach body and things like that. But I want us to get there in basically the most comfortable and healthy way possible, and in a way that when you get there, you can sustain it. And you don't have to set your maintenance calories, and then you have to go into a diet break, and you have to do all these different things to reset your hormones and your cheat day. Like, look, just feel good being super shredded. And it's possible to do. It's absolutely possible to do. A lot of people think you can't hover at, relatively low levels of body fat without feeling like crap and your testosterone tanking. If you're consuming super nutrient dense foods to satiety and you're training in the right way and you're taking care of your sleep, you can absolutely do this stuff. So I do tell people, like, yes, okay, so we are going for this lean physique, but we're going to be focusing on whole foods here. And I like some of the people that are starting to talk about a whole foods animal-based diet, which I think that's cute way to take a jab at the vegans there. But it really is. It does need to be a whole foods focus. Whey protein, there's a lot of great information out there about whey, and I'm sort of split about if I like it or not. But if you can consume that from meat or from eggs or from fish, for example, you're going to be getting so many more nutrients. And I think, why not just eat those, So, but I can understand some of the benefits around it. I know if you're a bodybuilder and you just constantly want to be in that elevated anabolic state all the time and don't want to go catabolic, bro. And so I can understand some of those arguments. And I'm not super into the bodybuilding scene. I'm good at that Hollywood physique, that whole like lean shredded thing. But if the dude's trying to get just, Mr. Olympia jacked, right, I'm got to talk to about that.
Right. Now, one of the things I want to ask you, because you hit the nail on the head, and you work with so many people that are not only just hitting their goals, but like crushing through them. But sometimes a lot of this information can get overwhelming, right? Like, you come at it and you're like, oh, you need this vitamin, this, that, the other thing. And sometimes people are just like, where do I get started? So what are some simple steps that you have? What are some simple things that you implement or can tell people about, like, hey, here's just simple things to get you started on the right track?
Yeah, so starting off, the first thing I recommend people, especially if they're not keto adapted, have breakfast, lunch, dinner. And with those meals, focus on red meat, fish, eggs, and then you could maybe do some fermented dairy if you're okay with that. So I base the diet around that. But it's really red meat, fish, and eggs. That's the crux of it right there. So have that for breakfast, lunch, dinner. It can be as simple as, ground beef and some eggs. You can throw in some bacon in there. You can have some salmon in there. You could even do tuna. You can do sardines. You could do different things like that. And I also recommend packing some snacks that'll work. So hard-boiled eggs, for example, I like to do that. Occasionally I'll have cottage cheese as a snack. I might bring oysters with me, things like that. So when you're in the beginning stages of this, it's more important to form the habit of eating like this than to do everything all at once. And now you're fasting and you're training hard and you're eating super lean, and then you just burn out. So form the habits first. And I like to just do breakfast, lunch, dinner. Because if you're trying to skip breakfast at first, as soon as you get those real bad hunger pangs, like, you're going to crack, especially if you're at work. Most of the people that I work with, they got jobs, they got families, they have things to do. Like, they're not just working on their own projects at home, so they don't have access to eat whatever they want all the time. And if you're at work, you're going to go to the break room and have that muffin. Right. So pretty much pack those snacks, have the breakfast, lunch, dinner. And then from there, Then we start to go towards pushing off breakfast. And that's when I start to transition people into, okay, now we're going to be skipping breakfast and we're going to do a big lunch and a big dinner. And then we remove the snacks during the eating window. So it's just lunch and dinner, and you start to go bigger on those meals. But the overall tips that I would give people, you want to salt your foods. I do recommend a magnesium supplement at night. I think that there's a lot of great reasons around that, but definitely recommend a magnesium supplement at night. Let's see, what else would I recommend? Just focusing on meat, eggs, and fish in the beginning. If you're just doing meat, you might be missing out on a few things. So just focus meat, eggs, fish. That seems to be, relatively easy to tolerate for a lot of people. And then if you can do dairy, do that as well. And just try to condense your eating window over time. But don't do everything all at once.
And with a lot of the clients you work with, are a lot of them like actively resistance training, or is there any advice that you give them like, hey, just take a 15-minute walk, or is there any exercise advice you incorporate in with that?
Yeah, so the major thing that I do with people is like this 8-week carnivore fat loss plan, where I pretty much take them through step by step through the diet and also through the training. And the kind of training I recommend for a lot of people, the foundation of it is zone 2 cardio. So it's low level aerobic activity. You're not getting glycolytic, which means it's not super high intensity. It's not burning through your muscle glycogen. It's much easier to recover from. It's pretty gentle on the body. And it's just giving you lots of that low-level aerobic activity that I think a lot of people need. So that's the foundation of it right there. And for people that's like, what's zone 2 cardio? Basically, the idea behind it is you take 180 minus your age, and that's your maximum heart rate right there. So you want to stay a little bit below that. For me, I'm usually in the 150s whenever I'm doing this zone 2 sort of cardio. And the idea is that when you're staying in that zone, you're mostly functioning off of lipolysis. You're mostly burning fat. You're not burning too much glycogen. So it's a lot gentler on the body in terms of cardio. And I recommend people don't do too much HIIT. Don't do too much Tabatas. Don't go super intense early on because you're still adapting. So it's about 6 days a week of zone 2 cardio, as simple as brisk walking, hiking, riding your bike. You can do Stairmaster if you want. You can do an elliptical. I like to do light jogging. Jump rope's a little too intense, I find, for myself. My heart rate spikes up there, so I don't do that. But yeah, so it's just low-level aerobic activity, making that a daily habit. And then 3 days a week, I like to include resistance training. So for most of the people that I work with, they're going to the gym 3 days a week. Some people we customize with calisthenics and just finding equipment that they can get at home. But I like to focus the training around some body weight movements, some compound movements, and then some bodybuilding movements. And by bodybuilding, I just mean like hypertrophy type movements. So I think the compounds are critical to develop that foundation of strength in the body. It's gonna injury proof you. It's gonna set you up for better muscle gains in the long term. It just really helps out with building lean muscle. I like the hypertrophy stuff towards the end of the workout, kind of to pump the muscles up. To get some of that, I think it's sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, but just to fill out the muscles a little bit more. And then the calisthenics is usually used as a warm-up early on, and I think that's just great to warm the body up, to get you going. If you're doing a leg day, maybe starting out with body weight lunges, jump squats, things like that. So that's sort of the basis of the program, and then every 2 weeks we alternate the sort of exercises we're doing. And it does have a progression model. So we're always increasing weight on the compound lifts. The other lifts, it's kind of like have fun with those. With your hypertrophy and your calisthenics, you're just going intense, you're working hard, but the compounds slowly increasing weight and focusing on form throughout. So that's kind of my philosophy around training, and that's what I have most people doing in the gym.
That's amazing, man. And that's a great protocol. It's periodized. People are seeing results. It's incredible. So one of the things I want to do is shift gears for this last part and talk a little bit about like personal lifestyle outlook. Because like I said in the beginning, I think people are going to gain a ton out of the keto side of everything you just broke down, everything you just talked about like, hey, here's my story, here's why we do what we do, and here's our approach. But I think on top of that, where like you kind of are even at another level, is you focus a lot on like mindset and personal growth and surrounding yourself with the right people. What are some of the tips and tools that you utilize? What are some of the things? I know you're big into reading. I saw a lot of the books that you read. I'm like, oh, I have a whole bookshelf of a lot of the same ones, so I know they're the good ones. What else? What are some tips and tools that you have for people on mindset?
Oh man, that's so critical. Like, so that is the single most life-changing thing that ever happened to me. Like, part of my story was that I basically had this crazy dream about becoming an actor. Like, it was a literal dream, and I woke up and realized it wasn't true. And I wrote it down as a goal for myself, and I wanted to accomplish that goal in 1 year because I was about to graduate, and I thought, okay, as soon as you're out in the real world, like, you're screwed, man. So you better do this now. And it happened. And at the time, I was just infusing my mind with all of the personal development literature, all the self-help books, every single author I could listen to, Darren Hardy and Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins and just all the usual suspects. So I was just pumping my mind full of that stuff. And there's a few strategies I used here. So one, we know that people can get brainwashed. You can absolutely brainwash a group of people to believe a certain thing or to take on a certain ideology. So I figured, why not brainwash myself to have a success mindset? So I figured I know brainwash has a negative connotation, but I thought, what if I can get myself to adopt the mindset of successful people that, achieve massive goals? So I thought, okay, what can I do? What are my different inputs here? I can listen to things every day. I can read these books. I can do vision boards. I can write my goals down every day. I can just constantly be focused on pursuing these different goals that I have. So I did all of those things. Every single day I was reading. Every single day I was getting up at like 4:30 in the morning, and I was listening to these positive inspirational tapes as I would go to the gym. I was writing my goals down in the morning. I would write them down at night. I'm a huge, huge believer in goal setting. So if you have all of these different tools available to you to achieve your goals, why not use all of them? You might find over time that some of them aren't as beneficial to you. For me, I just can't get myself to meditate, and I've never found a huge benefit from it. So that's one of the ones that I don't do, for example. But for some people, they might find that more beneficial. So I would say incorporate all of these different success practices into your life: the meditation, the gratitude, the goal setting, reading these books, listening to the inspirational audio in the morning. And it's just mental nutrition. You're fueling your mind. And so many people are just mentally starved. Their daily mental diet is full of news, Facebook, Instagram, just whatever their friends are watching on Netflix, talks in the coffee room, all that kind of stuff. It's like most people don't ever care to fuel their own mind, to educate themselves, to nourish themselves. And I think that's really sad. So that's part of it, fueling your own mind with all of those different things that you have available to you. The second part is you have to have a clear vision of where you want to go. As soon as you have that clear vision of what your goal is, you are literally going to have insights about what to do to get there. It's weird, but things pop into your brain about, okay, you need to do this next. You need to do this next. And I think that's really, really powerful. So goal orientation. What I did with that acting goal, and this is what I still do with my goals to this day, I took that big goal. So my goal was to basically book a starring role on a major TV show within 1 year. And that sounds ridiculous, but you take that goal and then you say, what would I have to achieve to get to that? Okay, I'd have to have a great agent. I would have to look great. I would have to improve my acting skills. I would have to go to every single audition I could get my hands on. I would have to network with other actors and directors and producers. I would have to do some commercials, music videos, build up my resume. You tell yourself, okay, what do I need to do to achieve that? And then you start to break those steps down into smaller steps. Okay, what can I do this month to get there? And now you've got your monthly goals. And then that brings you to this week. What do I have to do this week to get there? And then from your weekly goals, you look at those every night and you figure out, okay, so what do I need to do tomorrow? Okay, I've got my daily habits, so I need to do my training. I need to read a book. I need to do all of these different habits. And then I have to make progress on these goals. So let me incorporate that into my schedule. I got to take care of my sleep, and then maybe I'll have some time for some social stuff. So if you plan your time in your day, which is your number one resource, if you plan that time, you can do so many things in the day and you can really make time for just about everything you need. Now, the other thing about that is if something matters to you, I say put it in the morning. So if something's really critical to do, if it's really, really valuable to do, and I think these are the actions that are like progress type actions, the things that really move the ball forward, I always put those in the morning. Because if you wait, like just something's going to come up. Like or 8 p.m. and you're going to be like, screw it. Like, how am I going to get up at 4 tomorrow if I start my writing now? You know, and you're just not focused on it. So, for example, one of my goals right now is around writing this book. And so I'm working on this book, but I've realized, okay, as soon as I put this later in the day, it just doesn't happen, or it's a crappier quality, or, you know, my focus is off. So right now, my writing gets moved all the way up to the beginning of my day when I can't think about anything else. No one's awake. There's nothing else to be doing. There's nothing productive I could possibly be doing at that time besides writing this book. And then I just focus in 2 hours. I write that book. No matter what happens for the rest of the day, I have made progress on one of my biggest goals. I believe Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits calls this it's like a quadrant 2 activity. I don't know if it's quadrant 2, zone 2. But this is basically something that is not urgent, but it's important. And those are the things that most people neglect. The really important things that are going to move us forward in life, but it's just not urgent. You know, it's just not really pressing on you today. So you're like, nah, screw it. I'll get around to it someday. Someday never comes. And then, you know, people are 50 and they have a midlife crisis and they're like, crap, there was so much I was supposed to do and I didn't do any of it. Now I'm getting old. And it's like, guys, just schedule, just focus on doing these things. So that's what I recommend with people around goals. Know what your goals are, envision the kind of things that you really want to achieve, and then break those down so that every day I don't get up thinking, I want to write a New York Times best-selling book. I don't think about that. I think, okay, today I just need to write for 2 hours and I have these topics I have to cover and I know where that's taking me. And then every single action you take towards that is a little bit easier because you know that there's an outcome that you're working towards. So that's also long-winded, but that's kind of the approach to goal setting. There's not much more I can say about it.
No, that's huge. And I do the same exact thing. Take the approach of like you have your macro goal, which for you, like writing a book is one of them right now. And then how do you break that down and ultimately get down to the nitty gritty of like, what do I need to do today? I think a lot of times people see that macro goal and they're like, a lot of times when it comes to like changing their body, they're like, oh, I want to lose 150 pounds. And they're like, that's their macro goal. And they just get overwhelmed and they're like, oh gosh, like I'm not, they never get started. They never get, and because they're never able to break it down completely and understand, wow, if I go for a 10-minute walk today and that's all I do, I'm making progress towards that goal. Or if I cut out one diet soda or one soda in general this month, I'm making progress towards that goal. And people forget about that. So I love your mindset on it, and I'm in complete agreement about breaking it down and making priorities first thing in the morning. When we wrote the ketogenic Bible, like every morning I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and would write until 9 uninterrupted. And that was the only way we were able to do it in 8 months. Was you have to prioritize that, whatever it may be, prioritize it in the morning. One of the things I just want to ask you real quick is your morning routine. Obviously right now, like one of them is writing. What are some other things that you do in your morning routine? Because I think like that is a pivotal way to get your day started. You just talked about like checking something off your list. You talked about gratitude. You talked about a bunch of different things. What does that look like for you in every morning, like waking up and going through that checklist?
Yeah, so there's a couple things I try to incorporate. For one, it's doing that progress work. So it's for me writing. As soon as I'm done with writing, I like to do something physical. So it's either going to be my walking or I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to do my training. So that might be at about like 7 or 8 a.m. And then after that, I also take time with my relationship. So I'll usually go with my girlfriend to a coffee shop where we might make coffee. We'll just sit down, talk, and get some quality time in together, because it's the same as all the other goals. It's like if that starts to become towards the end of the day, like you just don't put as much effort into it. So we really prioritize that towards the beginning of the day, that we get to have some quality time together before, we go off and do whatever we need to do. And then the last thing that I do is I try to incorporate an audiobook every day. So that's just been to me the most convenient way to do it. that can be part of my walking. Sometimes I do that as I'm walking. I'll just listen to an audiobook, or it might be in the car. Wherever I'm heading for the day, I might just listen to an audiobook. And my goal right now, I've really tried to narrow it down to about 30 minutes a day. Because, whenever I try to do like an hour a day, it just doesn't happen. And it's a little bit too much for me at this point. So 30 minutes a day, just making sure I'm doing it. And that's kind of what my morning routine is like. It's a long morning routine. It's like from about 4 a.m. to maybe like 10 or 11 a.m. And then at about 10 or 11, that's usually when I just start all the rest of the work for the day. Yeah, so that's pretty much what it looks like at this point. It's not super complicated. I used to do like a lot of the I would need a gratitude journal and then visualize and then do some yoga and then do this and that. And it was just like it became too much of a thing. And I was like, I'm just going to focus on the things that I know really, really work for me. And that's kind of what I've stuck to.
No, that's great. And you hit the nail on the head. And something I talk about all the time is I say, listen, priorities are never in conflict. So you prioritize that morning, like literally looking at your 4 to 10 a.m. is probably more than 50% of the population accomplishes in a 24-hour period because they're so scatterbrained. They're all over the place. Like you literally are like, hey, these are things that are important in my life. This is why they're important. And I'm going to make that a priority because like no matter who you are, what you're doing, shit happens. Like shit's going to come up and it's going to happen and it's going to get in the way and then it gets pushed to the side. So use that time. Like people always complain like, oh, I'm working a 9 to 5. I can't do that. I don't have time. And like I did an entire podcast on this concept of like I don't have time. It's like, no, it's not a priority. Everyone has the same amount of time. It's just you're prioritizing X over Y. So it's whatever you make a priority is what you have time for. And I think that's one of the things. And I love that you even touched on like your social part of things and your relationship. Like that's a priority to you. So you need to dedicate time to that. And I think a lot of times people forget about that. And like incorporating that into this whole overall health and well-being, it's like that's a part of it. Like make sure you're making that a priority and making sure that that fits in with your nutrition, with your goals and everything else that you're trying to accomplish. It's all part of this lifestyle.
Yeah, that's one of the beautiful things about fitness is you learn that by daily putting in time to a certain activity, you can actually change who you are. So who I am right now is not who I will be in a month in the gym. That version of me will actually be stronger than I am currently. And people that don't have that growth mindset don't realize, oh, these kind of daily activities actually matter. I think a lot of the time, people are so concerned with just their jobs and just their work that they don't realize that, okay, I still have these relationships, I still have a family, I still have things that I have to take care of because something is either growing and it's experiencing, hypertrophy or it's atrophying. And I think that's how almost everything in life works. So whatever you're not moving forward on, you're probably dropping the ball on. But here's the other thing about that. Nobody's perfect. And just like in the gym, you'll have, days where you kind of suck or you miss reps or the workout is kind of crap. It's totally cool. But it's not cool if you don't make an adjustment and try to change something for the next day. So for me, I don't always execute perfectly on everything I have written down every day. The schedule changes, priorities get rearranged, some goals don't get accomplished. Usually the more important ones do, but some of the less important ones can kind of fall on the back burner. But the thing is, at the end of the day, I still reassess, okay, what happened today? Where could I improve? And then you make changes for tomorrow. And I think it's only a failure if you just say, yep, I lost today. Whatever, I'll try again tomorrow. Like, there's no plan around that. There's no action taken to sort of rectify that mistake. So that's kind of the cool part of looking at your day at the end of the day and saying, how did today go? Cool. What changes can I make? And then what are my goals for tomorrow? And that's how all these things come about. That's how I realized that I needed to put my relationship in the morning. That's how I realized that I needed to put all these things, in order, putting first things first, because the stuff just started to slide and you just make adjustments and then you find a routine that works better for you. So the routine that like we're talking about where we spend a lot of time in the morning sort of focusing on personal development and work, that doesn't work for everyone. So people might have to adjust their priorities. And I totally get like, if you're working the night shift or if you got to be in at work at 6 or 7 in the morning, or if you're a student and you're juggling 50 different things, like I get it, man. You're just going to have to do the best you can with what you have. But know what's most important to you. Write that down and then find a way to work that into your day every day. One of the guys that always inspires me is Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he's had these periods of his life where when you read his biography, the things he was doing with his bricklaying business, his mail order business, his bodybuilding, his pursuing a college education, all of these different things, the guy knew how to pack in lots of different activities at once. So it's definitely possible to do, and people have done it before. But yeah, you just kind of have to schedule that stuff out.
Exactly. And I think people that are able to do that, they're way more efficient with their time. They're not wasting time scrolling through, worrying about what the Kylie Jenner did, or worrying what like they're laser focused, and they know how to bring things together. And with that being said, I want to be cognizant of your time. I know you're super busy. I know you have a lot going on. You're changing the world literally every day, and I freaking love it. One of the last questions I want to ask you is this. We're big on goal setting. You talked a little bit about one goal you have. What are some other things that you have that are goals or plans for the near future?
Ooh, that's exciting. I don't often talk about these, so that's good, but I feel like I'm in good hands here. So obviously, writing that book, getting it up on the New York Times bestseller list, that is one of my goals. But I'm not just focused on what I want to attain from that. It's more about what value would I have to put forward to write a book of that level, of that caliber. So that's kind of where I'm focusing all my time in right now. The other goal is to really grow this online business. So I'm doing about like $15,000 a month. And again, the focus is what sort of service do I have to provide to people to get to that level? And then other goals involve some relationship goals. Let's see what else is there. So it's working on those. Those are kind of the top two that are at the top of what I'm working on right now. There are a couple other goals. It's funny, I forget when people ask me because I have them all written down. I just do the work every day. Right. And then people ask me like, so what are you doing today? I'm like, I don't know. I'd have to look at the schedule. I have no clue. But yeah, so those are kind of my major goals at this point. Acting right now, it's sort of not the number one priority in my life. It's something that I'm planning to revisit, and I have goals around acting. But right now, I really feel passionately about the carnivorous diet, the ketogenic diet, and what nutrition and fitness has done for me. It's such a life changer for me that I want to share that with other people, and that's kind of where my passion is at right now. So with, speaking at KetoCon later this year and about going to some of these events, meeting these people, doing the podcast with Chris, that is the Better, Stronger, Faster podcast, if you guys want to check that out, with myself and Chris Bell. And then working on this book and working on this online business, that's kind of what I'm really diving into at the moment.
Incredible, man. Well, if there's anything at all that I can do to help support it, and I'm 100% in. I love your mindset, everything you provide, all the value you bring to people is just absolutely incredible. And I hope more people hear your story. I'm seeing you speak at more and more events, and I freaking love it. You're like my friend Josh Perry. Like it's a gem that's like underneath, like people don't know all about it, and I'm like, this guy needs to be on every front news article, everything, because your story is amazing, and I love that, and I love when people get inspired, and not just people that put out motivation, but people who allow people to take inspired action. And you're literally walking people through and say, whether it's nutrition, health, whatever it may be, you're inspiring them to take action. And whatever that action is, at least they're 1% better today than they were yesterday. And that's ultimately what matters. So last thing is, where can people find you? I know a lot of people are going to be like, I need to follow this guy if I haven't already. Do you have a website, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube? Where are you at?
Yeah, so majorly Instagram is where I post most of my content. So that is just at William Shewfelt, SHEWFELT. Also YouTube, so youtube.com/Will Shewfelt. I do a lot of different vlogs there. It's nutrition, it's fitness, and it's lifestyle. So we try to have fun and just do everything with that. There's also a lot of motivation on there. And then also the Better, Stronger, Faster podcast. We're still in the beginning stages, so I think we've put out maybe 6 episodes at this point, and we've recorded about like 12, 13. So this is myself and Chris Bell, and we're just connecting because we have so many similar interests. We're both meatheads. We're both doing this carnivore diet. We're both wrestling fans. We're both involved in the entertainment industry and filmmaking, movie making. So there were so many different areas that we both liked a lot of the same things. So we decided to do a podcast together, and it's been great so far. We've had some amazing guests on, and we're working on growing that as well. And besides that, if people want to try out my approach to carnivore fat loss, this is really all about getting a lean, kind of ripped physique. And you can start from any point. The majority of people that I'm working with are starting heavily overweight, and we're bringing their weight down dramatically using this carnivorous, nutrient-dense diet approach. So that is the 8-week carnivore fat loss plan. And then I also have carnivore shredding, which is more of the health guide. And that's really, it's not so much focused on body composition, but it's more about just getting healthy on a carnivore diet. So people can check out either of those programs, and that's on thecarnivoreshreddingprogram.com. And that's pretty much where you can find me.
Awesome, man. And we'll post all those in the show notes so people can get direct access to it. But man, this was incredible. I felt like I know you on social media, but now I feel like I really know you, and we got to find a way to hang out. Next time I either come to LA or you're in Tampa, got to find a way to connect and grab a steak or a burger, no bun, whatever it may be, man. But I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, and I know people are going to get a ton of value out of this. So thank you very much for coming on the show.
Dude, thank you, man. It was a huge honor and a privilege because I've known about the Ketogenic Bible for a long time now. The first time I heard about you was actually it was the Ketogenic Athlete. And I'm forgetting who was almost Dr. something.
That was me.
Okay, so that was you, almost Dr. Ryan. They kept calling you that, and I thought that was funny. But that's when I first heard about the work that you guys were doing, and then I checked out the Ketogenic Bible. And dude, I am all about the stuff that you're about. Like, I'm so inspired to see what you're doing in all of these different areas and the growth you're experiencing with incorporating, because this is a lifestyle thing, incorporating the mindset, incorporating the positivity, improving your life in all aspects as well as the nutrition. So I'm pumped for you too, man. And whatever I can do to help you out with that, just let me know. Trust me, anything. Yeah, man. So it was awesome.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Guys, we'll talk to you soon.